You don't reach out anymore. Not because something happened, not because you decided anything. It just stopped being part of how you move through the world. You handle things quietly. You don't announce what you're carrying. You don't check if anyone is available. It feels normal, so normal that it's invisible. There's no tension in it, no drama, no moment where it changed. You simply learned to keep going without asking, and the world kept moving as if nothing was missing. Nothing is being asked of you here. Nothing needs to be offered.
You're young, 6, maybe 7, old enough to notice patterns, young enough to still believe that asking is part of how things work. There's an adult nearby, physically present, emotionally occupied by something you can't name yet. You sense it before anything happens. The air feels tight. Their attention is already stretched thin. You pause, not because you're afraid, but because you're assessing. You look at their face first, their tone, their posture. You calculate the moment without knowing that's what you're doing. When you ask, it's careful, quiet, stripped of urgency. You don't ask for much, just enough to see if asking still works. Nothing really changes. Not the situation, not the outcome. Maybe they don't hear you. Maybe they respond without looking. Maybe they acknowledge you in a way that doesn't actually move anything. What you notice isn't rejection, it's inefficiency. Your need doesn't make things better, it makes them heavier. You feel it immediately, a subtle tension, a sense that you've added something unnecessary to a system already under strain. You watch how quickly the moment closes, how asking creates friction instead of support. You don't push. You don't repeat yourself. You absorb the information quietly. Something inside you recalibrates, not dramatically, practically. You realize that asking doesn't solve anything here. It only adds weight. And without anyone saying it out loud, you begin to understand that handling things yourself is easier for everyone.
Something settles inside you, not as a thought, as a rule. It doesn't come from fear. It comes from observation. You've seen what happens when you speak up. You've felt the subtle shift in the room, the extra weight added to something already fragile. So your system simplifies the math. If I don't ask for help, then nothing gets worse. The rule feels clean, protective, final. And once it forms, everything else quietly organizes itself around it.
You became the one who figured things out, not because you wanted to, because it worked. You became independent early, not loudly, quietly. You learned how to solve problems without drawing attention to them, how to manage discomfort without asking anyone to step in, how to adjust your needs downward until they fit the space available. You became the low-maintenance one, the one who didn't interrupt, the one who didn't add pressure. People noticed. They called you capable. They said you were easy. They admired how little you seemed to need. And each time that happened, something narrowed inside you. You became the one who handles it, the one who figures it out alone, the one who doesn't wait, the one who doesn't ask. Not because you don't feel needs, but because you learned how expensive they are. So you carry things yourself, not with resentment, with efficiency. And over time, it stops feeling like a strategy. It starts feeling like who you are.
There is a word for this. Not to explain it, just to acknowledge it. Psychologists sometimes call this hyper-independence, a pattern where not asking feels safer than reaching out, where self-reliance isn't confidence, it's protection. The name doesn't change what happened, it just lets it exist. You might notice how easily things fall onto your shoulders, not because you ask for them, but because you never hand anything back. You might handle problems quietly, almost automatically. Bills, decisions, emotional weight. You don't announce it, you just do it. And when someone asks how you're managing, you say it's fine. Not because it is, because that answer keeps everything simple. You might feel a subtle discomfort when support is offered. Not resistance, not distrust, just a tightening, as if accepting help would change the balance, as if it would create a debt you don't know how to repay. So you thank them and keep going alone. You might minimize your own struggles without realizing it. You downplay exhaustion. You edit your own story before sharing it. You tell yourself others have it harder, that this isn't worth mentioning, that needing less makes you easier to be around. You might be the reliable one, the person others lean on, the one who shows up, the one who figures it out. People trust you because you don't ask for much, but that trust comes with a quiet cost. You're needed, but rarely checked on. You might find it easier to help others than yourself. You can recognize someone else's needs immediately. You know what to say, what to do, how to support them without making it awkward. But when it comes to your own needs, the language disappears. You're not sure how to ask or who would even listen. And somewhere along the way, self-sufficiency starts to feel like worth, like being capable is the same as being valuable, like needing less makes you safer to keep. So you stay competent, you stay contained, you stay independent, even when you're tired. From the outside, this looks like strength, composure, capability, but inside it's constant effort, a life built around making sure nothing becomes too much for anyone else. This isn't independence that shows itself, it's independence that never got permission to stop. This wasn't independence because you didn't need anyone. It was independence because asking felt unsafe. Because at some point you learned that needing something changed the atmosphere, that it added pressure, that it asked too much of people who were already carrying more than they could hold. So you adapted, not by becoming stronger than others, but by becoming quieter in your needs, more efficient with your emotions, more careful with what you asked for. That wasn't a personality trait. It was intelligence responding to conditions, a nervous system learning how to keep things stable, how to reduce impact, how to survive without drawing attention to what you lacked. There was nothing weak about that, and there is nothing shameful in understanding why it formed.
You stopped asking because it felt safer that way. Because somewhere along the line, asking began to feel heavier than holding it in. Not dramatic, just heavier. You learned to scan the room before you spoke, to measure timing, to decide whether your need was worth the shift it might cause. And most of the time, the answer was no. So you adjusted. You told yourself it wasn't that important, that you could handle it, that it would pass. No one sat you down and told you not to need. No one explained that your needs were inconvenient. You figured it out quietly, through tone, through delay, through the way things didn't change after you spoke. You didn't stop needing, you stopped showing it. And that child learned how to disappear parts of themselves without leaving the room, to stay present but smaller, to be there but not in the way, to exist without adding weight. That wasn't maturity, that was adaptation. You carried your questions inward, your confusion inward, your hopes inward, and you became very good at surviving without witnesses. If someone had looked closely, they might have noticed how careful you were, how contained, how rarely you asked for anything at all. But no one asked why. So now, when you think of that child, you don't need to change them. You don't need to fix what they learned. You just need to see them. The child who stopped asking didn't disappear. They're still here, still quiet, still holding more than they ever should have had to. You don't have to ask for anything right now. Not clarity, not reassurance, not change. There is nothing required of you in this moment. Nothing you need to explain, nothing you need to justify. Understanding doesn't demand movement. It doesn't ask you to become different. It simply allows you to see what has been true for a long time. The part of you that learned not to ask did what it needed to do. It kept things steady. It kept things manageable. It kept you inside the room.
That doesn't need to be undone tonight, or tomorrow, or at all. You can let this awareness sit where it is, without turning it into a plan, without turning it into a promise. You are allowed to pause here, to exist without reaching, to notice without deciding. Nothing is waiting for you on the other side of this understanding. No task, no expectation, just a quieter recognition of yourself.